What if the most profound secrets of the ancient world weren't lost to time, but were hidden in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of myths and symbols? Picture a labyrinth of knowledge so carefully guarded that only those initiated into secret societies could decipher its meaning. For centuries, groups like the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians have operated in the shadows, preserving wisdom not through scrolls or libraries, but through intricate symbols, rituals, and stories passed down like sacred heirlooms. These societies didn't just hide their teachings, they encoded them, turning myths into vessels for truths too powerful to be forgotten. Think about the last time you saw an ancient symbol, maybe an eye inside a triangle or a compass and square. Did you wonder if there was more to it than meets the eye? These images aren't just decorative, they're fragments of a puzzle, pieces of a grander design meant to survive wars, persecutions, and the rise and fall of empires. The symbols themselves became the keepers of knowledge, whispering secrets to those who knew how to listen. But why go to such lengths? Why cloak wisdom in allegory and myth? The answer lies in the delicate balance between preservation and protection. Some truths were considered too dangerous, too transformative to be shared openly. This is where our journey begins. Over the next 23 revelations, we'll step into the hidden halls of history's most enigmatic societies, unraveling the stories behind their symbols and the myths that kept their knowledge alive. From the serpentine wisdom of the Ophites to the celestial mysteries of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, each society wove its own tapestry of meaning, ensuring their teachings would endure. You'll discover how a simple geometric shape could hold the key to universal understanding, or how a forgotten legend might conceal a blueprint for enlightenment. So take a deep breath. We're about to peel back the layers of time, one symbol at a time. The shadows of the past are waiting, and they have so much to tell us. The Freemasons didn't just build structures, they built entire philosophies into stone. Take their most famous emblem, the compass and square. At first glance, it's a simple tool of the trade, but dig deeper, and you'll find a blueprint for living. The square represents morality, the compass spiritual aspiration, and together they form a boundary between earthly imperfection and divine perfection. But here's where it gets fascinating. Some researchers argue these symbols aren't just metaphors. They might be fragments of an older, deeper knowledge, architectural secrets from civilizations like ancient Egypt or even Atlantis. Consider Solomon's Temple, the cornerstone of Masonic lore. The society claims lineage from its builders, those legendary craftsmen who supposedly possessed sacred geometric knowledge. What if that temple wasn't just a physical structure but a coded message? Its dimensions, proportions, and alignment with celestial bodies mirror patterns found in pyramids and megalithic sites worldwide. Could the Freemasons have preserved these geometric truths, passing them down through rituals instead of scrolls? Then there's the winding staircase, another potent Masonic symbol. Initiates are taught it represents the ascent to wisdom, but its spiral shape echoes sacred geometry found in nature, from galaxies to seashells. Coincidence? Or intentional design? Even their aprons, often dismissed as ceremonial garb, carry grid-like patterns resembling architectural plans. Every stitch, every symbol feels deliberate, as if whispering, "Look closer." And let's not forget the lost word, a central Masonic mystery. During rituals, initiates search for a hidden name of God, said to hold immense power. Could this word actually be a formula, a mathematical or architectural principle disguised as myth? Some speculate it's tied to the golden ratio or harmonic frequencies, concepts that ancient builders might have used to create structures with seemingly supernatural acoustics and stability. So the next time you pass a Masonic lodge, don't just glance at its symbols. Pause. That unassuming square and compass above the door. It's more than decor. It's an invitation, a challenge even, to measure not just stone, but the very foundations of knowledge itself. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the greatest secrets aren't always buried. Sometimes they're etched in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to see. The Rosicrucians didn't just seek gold, they chased a far more elusive treasure, the transmutation of the human spirit itself. While Europe was gripped by alchemical fever in the early 1600s, this enigmatic society emerged with a radical proposition. What if the legendary philosopher's stone wasn't merely a substance to turn lead into gold, but a metaphor for enlightenment? Their emblem, the Rosy Cross, tells the story in a single image, a rose blooming at the intersection of a cross where the earthly meets the divine. Take their most cryptic text, the Fama Fraternitatis, published in 1614. On the surface, it reads like a fantastical tale of a secret brotherhood discovering a hidden vault filled with alchemical secrets. But between the lines, it's a manifesto for spiritual rebirth. The vault's 7 sides correspond to the 7 classical planets, each representing a stage of inner transformation. Even the name Christian Rosicrucians, their mythical founder, is layered with meaning. Rose for dew, cruz for cross, symbols of purification and sacrifice. Was this entire legend an elaborate cipher for the alchemical process of refining the soul? Their symbolism runs deeper than most realize. Consider the rose itself. Its petals unfold in perfect Fibonacci spirals, echoing the same geometric patterns found in sacred architecture. And the cross, far from a simple religious icon, it's a map, vertical axis for ascent toward wisdom, horizontal for the spread of that knowledge into the world. Together, they form a living blueprint for balance, a theme echoed in their elusive motto, Ex Deo Nascimus, in Jesu Morimer, per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimus. From God we are born, in Jesus we die, by the Holy Spirit we are reborn. Notice the progression: birth, death, renewal, mirroring the alchemical stages of nigredo, albedo, and rubedo. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. The Rosicrucians didn't just write about transformation, they embedded practical wisdom in plain sight. Their texts are peppered with botanical illustrations, roses, lilies, sunflowers, each holding clues. A sunflower tilting toward the light isn't just a pretty image, it's an instruction. Like the plant, the seeker must turn toward divine illumination. Even their invisible college, a network of adepts working in secret, suggests something profound. True knowledge isn't hoarded, it's cultivated, passed hand to hand like a living flame. So when whispers persist that the Rosicrucians vanished overnight, perhaps they simply achieved their ultimate experiment, not turning base metals into gold, but turning seekers into keepers, guardians of a truth too luminous to be contained. Their greatest legacy, the realization that every symbol, every myth is a mirror. Stare long enough, and you might just see your own reflection staring back, not as you are, but as you could be. The Knights Templar didn't just wear crosses, they buried secrets beneath them. When these warrior monks were arrested on Friday the 13th in 1307, their abrupt downfall sent shockwaves through Europe. But their legacy wasn't erased, it was encrypted. Take their emblem, the double-headed eagle. At first glance, it's a regal symbol of power, but look closer. One head gazes east, the other west, mirroring the Templars' reach from Jerusalem to Paris. Some say it's a map of their hidden trade routes. Others insist it's a cipher for dualistic wisdom, earthly and divine knowledge intertwined. Then there's the Beausaint, their infamous black and white banner. Most assume it symbolized the order's monastic vows, but medieval scholars noted something peculiar. Its alternating bands resemble the checkered flooring of King Solomon's temple, where legend claims the Templars excavated something extraordinary during their 9-year dig beneath Temple Mount. Was it the Ark of the Covenant, fragments of the true cross, or something far more unexpected, ancient financial records? Because here's the twist: the Templars didn't just hoard relics, they pioneered the first international banking system. Pilgrims could deposit gold in Paris and withdraw it in Jerusalem using coded parchment notes, a system so advanced it threatened monarchs. This duality, spiritual guardianship paired with financial genius, fuels the Grail mystery. The Holy Grail wasn't just a chalice, but a metaphor for lost knowledge. Templar initiation rituals allegedly involved cryptic questions about the head that speaks and the wine that doesn't intoxicate. Could these riddles point to the real treasure? Some researchers suggest they discovered early Christian texts challenging church doctrine, while others propose they safeguarded sacred geometry principles from the temple's ruins. Even their architecture whispers clues. Templar chapels like Lyon in France align so precisely with solar events that on certain dates, light illuminates hidden carvings of grapevines and cups. And then there's Rosslyn Chapel, Scotland's so-called Templar sanctuary. Its pillars twist with carved vines and cornstalks, flora native not to Scotland but to the Holy Land. Beneath them, a subterranean vault rumored to hold everything from the Grail to Templar gold remains sealed. But perhaps the greatest evidence of their hidden network lies in their sudden maritime exodus after their suppression. Fleet records vanish, yet identical Templar symbols appear overnight in Portugal's Order of Christ and Scotland's Sinclair castles. Coincidence or a coordinated dispersal of secrets? So when historians debate whether the Templars were heretics or saints, bankers or mystics, maybe the answer is simpler: they were archivists, guardians of a truth too vast for one era to hold. Because real relics aren't just objects, they're ideas, and ideas, once buried, have a way of resurfacing when the world is ready to listen. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn didn't just study magic, they treated the universe like a living textbook, its pages written in symbols waiting to be decoded. Emerging in late 19th century London, this secret society became the beating heart of the occult revival, blending Egyptian mythology, Kabbalah, and Renaissance alchemy into a single, shimmering tapestry of esoteric knowledge. But what set them apart wasn't just their rituals, it was their obsession with structure. Every symbol, every gesture, every incantation was meticulously designed to mirror the hidden architecture of reality itself. Take their most famous teaching tool, the Tree of Life. At first glance, it's just 10 circles connected by 22 paths, but to initiates, it was a cosmic blueprint. Each sephira, those glowing spheres, represented a divine attribute, from wisdom to mercy, while the paths between them corresponded to tarot cards and Hebrew letters. Together, they formed a ladder of consciousness, a step-by-step guide to ascending from the material world to the divine. But here's what's startling. Modern physicists note eerie parallels between this ancient diagram and string theory's multidimensional universe. Coincidence or evidence that the Golden Dawn accessed a timeless truth? Their rituals were equally layered. Imagine a darkened temple, its walls adorned with Egyptian gods and zodiac signs. Initiates, robed in black and silver, traced flaming pentagrams in the air, not as superstition, but as a psychological technology. The Golden Dawn believed symbols were psychic triggers, that drawing a hexagram or vibrating a sacred name could rewire the mind, unlocking latent faculties. Even their tarot decks weren't mere fortune-telling tools. Each card was a portal. The High Priestess's veil concealed the subconscious, the Tower's lightning bolt symbolized sudden enlightenment, and the Fool's cliff edge step mirrored quantum leaps in awareness. Then there's their most controversial legacy, Enochian magic. Decades before the Golden Dawn, Elizabethan occultist John Dee claimed to receive an angelic language with reality-altering power. The Golden Dawn didn't just adopt it, they systemized it, turning cryptic sigils into a full occult alphabet. Modern linguists still puzzle over Enochian's uncanny grammatical structure, while neuroscientists marvel at how chanting its vowels can induce trance states. Was this forgotten tongue, as the Golden Dawn insisted, a direct line to higher dimensions? Yet for all their mysticism, the Order's real genius lay in synthesis. They didn't invent the tarot or astrology, they reassembled them, showing how Egyptian ankhs, Greek elements, and Kabbalistic numerology were fragments of a single shattered mirror. When their inner circle splintered, luminaries like Aleister Crowley and W.B. Yeats carried these shards into the 20th century, seeding everything from modern psychology to surrealist art. So the next time you shuffle a tarot deck or gaze at a star chart, remember, you're not just holding cards or reading stars, you're touching the edges of a map, one the Golden Dawn spent lifetimes piecing together, stitch by sacred stitch. The Illuminati didn't just challenge the status quo, they weaponized Enlightenment itself. Founded in Bavaria in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, this clandestine society emerged during an era when the church and monarchy ruled with absolute authority. Their mission, to infiltrate the halls of power and replace superstition with reason, secrecy with transparency. But here's the irony: to dismantle oppressive systems, they became masters of secrecy, operating through coded names, invisible ink, and a hierarchy so layered that even members didn't know the full scope of their own order. Take their most infamous symbol, the all-seeing eye. Today, it's plastered on conspiracy theories and dollar bills, but its original meaning was far more profound. To the Illuminati, it wasn't about surveillance, it was about vision. The eye represented the light of reason piercing through the darkness of ignorance, a beacon for those seeking truth beyond dogma. Yet, within decades, their symbol was twisted into a harbinger of control. How did a group dedicated to free thought become the boogeyman of every shadowy cabal theory? The answer lies in their methods. The Illuminati didn't just debate philosophy in candlelit rooms. They placed members in strategic positions, universities, courts, even newspapers, quietly shaping discourse from within. Their recruitment was meticulous, targeting young intellectuals who could rise through societal ranks. But their very success bred paranoia. When Bavarian authorities raided their meetings in 1785, they uncovered something unexpected. Not plans for world domination, but libraries of radical texts on human rights, science, and secular governance. The real threat wasn't their power, it was their ideas. Rumors of their survival persist because their ethos never truly died. Look at modern institutions, the push for global education, the rise of secular governance, even the internet's democratization of knowledge, all echo Illuminati ideals. Some argue their legacy lives on in think tanks and fraternal orders, while others insist they were merely scapegoats for a world uneasy with change. So the next time you see that unblinking eye, ask yourself, is it watching you or inviting you to see? Because the greatest conspiracy might not be about control. It's about the uncomfortable, liberating truth that knowledge, once unleashed, can't be caged again. The Druids didn't just worship trees, they spoke their language. In the misty forests of ancient Europe, these Celtic mystics operated as living bridges between humanity and nature, treating every oak, every spring, every celestial event as a chapter in a sacred text they refused to write down. Why? Because some truths, they believed, were too potent to be confined to parchment. Their knowledge wasn't lost, it was breathed into the wind, whispered through the rustling leaves of sacred groves, and etched into the very bones of the land they revered. Take the oak tree, their most hallowed symbol. To modern eyes, it's just a sturdy plant, but to the Druids, it was a cosmic antenna. Its roots plunged into the underworld, its trunk stood firm in the mortal realm, and its branches reached for the heavens, a living axis mundi connecting all planes of existence. And then there's the mistletoe, that golden sprig cut with a ritual sickle during the 6th lunar cycle. Roman historian Pliny the Elder recorded the ceremony with awe, noting how the plant, which grows between earth and sky without touching either, was considered a conduit for divine energy. But here's what often gets overlooked. Modern botany reveals mistletoe contains compounds that stimulate immune response. Coincidence or evidence the Druids understood plant medicine on a level science is only now rediscovering. Their calendar was no mere record of days, it was a symphony of celestial mechanics. Stone circles like Stonehenge, often misattributed solely to earlier cultures, show signs of Druidic use, with alignments marking solstices and lunar standstills. But these weren't just astronomical tools. The way sunlight struck certain stones at dawn on the winter solstice, for instance, may have illuminated carvings or triggered acoustic effects lost to time. Recent studies in archaeocaustics suggest some megalithic sites emit resonant frequencies when struck, potentially used in trance-inducing rituals. Could the Druids have harnessed sound and light as spiritual technology? Then there's the matter of their sacred groves, open-air temples so revered that Roman invaders described finding carved wooden poles smeared with sacrificial ochre, arranged in patterns mirroring constellations. No two groves were identical, each tailored to local ecology like a fingerprint. This bespoke approach hints at something profound. The Druids didn't impose dogma on nature. They learned from it, observing how water shaped stone, how deer trails formed natural labyrinths, how mycelial networks mirrored the stars above. In an era before the scientific method, they practiced a form of biomimicry, seeing the earth not as a resource but as a teacher. So when historians debate whether the Druids were primitive shamans or sophisticated ecologists, perhaps both labels miss the mark. They were something rarer, translators. Fluent in the grammar of seasons, the syntax of bird migrations, the poetry of tides, their legacy lingers not in dusty tomes, but in the quiet persistence of traditions. The maypole dances echoing tree worship, the Halloween bonfires tracing back to Samhain's spirit veils. The next time you walk through a forest, pause. That mossy stone, that twisted root, they might just be waiting to tell you a secret the Druids never wrote down, because some truths only grow when planted in the soul. The Sufi mystics didn't just dance, they spun the universe into existence with their feet. Imagine a dimly lit room where robed figures whirl in perfect circles, their arms outstretched, one palm turned to the heavens, the other rooted to the earth. This is the Sama, the sacred dance of the Sufi orders, but to call it mere movement would be like calling the ocean a puddle. Every rotation is a microcosm of the cosmos, a living parable of the soul's journey back to its divine source. The right hand gathers celestial energy, the left channels it into the world, and the swirling skirts, they're not just fabric. They are the petals of a blooming lotus, the spiraling galaxies, the very curve of time itself. Now consider the poetry of Rumi, the 13th century mystic, whose verses have been quoted everywhere from coffee mugs to meditation apps. But here's the secret. His love-struck lines about wine and roses aren't about earthly pleasures at all. They're coded maps. When Rumi writes, "Be drunk on love, for love is all that exists," he's not serenading a person, he's describing the annihilation of the ego in the presence of the divine. The tavern is the heart, the wine is grace, and the beloved, that's the infinite hiding in plain sight. Even his famous whirling dervishes weren't performers, They were alchemists, turning the lead of human separation into the gold of union through motion. The Sufis mastered the art of concealment. Take their zikr rituals, where repetitive chanting of sacred names induces trance states. On the surface, it's devotional practice, but neurologists now recognize these rhythms as sonic technology, a way to sync the brain's waves to higher frequencies. And their labyrinths of metaphor, they weren't just being poetic. In an era when direct spiritual claims could get you executed, symbolism became their shield. A rose's thorns taught detachment. Nightingales singing at dawn mirrored the soul's cry for reunion, and the broken lute in Hafiz's poems, that was the shattered illusion of the material world. But perhaps their most radical insight was this: truth isn't found in scriptures or sermons alone. It's in the body's sway, the breath's rhythm, the ecstatic cry that tears through the veil of logic. When a whirling dervish stumbles from dizziness, it's not failure, it's the point. The moment you lose balance is the moment you might just find something far greater. So the next time you hear a Sufi poem or see their sacred dance, don't just listen or watch, lean in. That dizzying spin, those cryptic verses, they're not relics of the past. They're an invitation to step into the whirlpool of the present, where every turn could be the one that unravels the illusion. The Kabbalists didn't just study divinity, they charted it like astronomers mapping the stars. At the heart of their mystical tradition stands the Etzchaim, the tree of life, its 10 luminous spheres called Sephirot pulsing with cosmic energy. But this wasn't some abstract diagram. It was a living latticework, a blueprint for how divine light cascades from the infinite into our tangible world. Picture it, Keter, the crown of pure potential, filters through wisdom and understanding, down to the pillars of mercy and severity, finally grounding in Malkuth, the kingdom of earthly existence. Each sphere isn't just a concept, it's a world, a state of consciousness, a note in a celestial chord. Now consider the Zohar, Kabbalah's most enigmatic text. Written in Aramaic and layered with allegory, it doesn't just describe the Sephirot, it dances around them. A passage might speak of a hidden river or a palace of pearls, but to the initiated, these are doorways. Take the story of the shattering of the vessels, where divine light proved too intense for its containers, scattering sparks into the material world. On one level, it's a creation myth. On another, it's a personal mandate. Our task is to gather those sparks through righteous action, repairing the cosmos itself. But here's where it gets mesmerizing. The Kabbalists didn't stop at theory. They turned their symbols into tools, the 22 paths connecting the Sephirot. They correspond to Hebrew letters, each with its own shape, number, and vibrational quality. Meditating on these letters wasn't just study, it was alchemy. Modern linguists have noted something uncanny. When ancient Hebrew characters are mapped onto the tree, their numerical values reveal geometric patterns mirroring molecular structures and celestial orbits. Was this intentional, or evidence that language itself might be a hidden architecture of reality? Then there's the practice of gematria, where words sharing numerical values are believed to hold secret links. For instance, the Hebrew words for serpent and Messiah both equal 358. Coincidence, or a cryptic hint that redemption lies in transforming temptation? Even the tree's structure whispers dualities. The right pillar's expansive mercy balances the left's restrictive judgment, while the central pillar harmonizes both, a lesson in equilibrium that echoes from quantum physics to psychology. But perhaps the most revolutionary Kabbalistic idea is Tzimtzum, the notion that creation began with God's self-contraction, making space for the universe. Not force but withdrawal, not a bang but a breath. In that void, the divine light could refract into the Sephirot's prism, allowing multiplicity without shattering unity. It's a concept so profound that modern cosmologists ponder its parallels with the Big Bang's singularity and the inflationary universe. So when scholars debate whether the Kabbalists were mystics or proto-scientists, maybe the answer is both. Their tree wasn't just a map, it was a mirror. Gaze into its branches long enough, and you might just see the universe tearing back, whispering that the greatest secrets aren't locked away. They're woven into the very fabric of existence, waiting for those who dare to look beyond the bark. The Thule Society didn't just study Norse myths, they weaponized them, twisting ancient symbols into keys for a lost world. Founded in Munich in 1918, this clandestine group claimed to search for Hyperborea, a mythical Arctic paradise described by Greek historians as a land beyond the north wind, where the sun never set and a race of giants thrived. But their vision wasn't about rediscovery, it was about rebirth. They believed Nordic runes weren't mere letters but vessels of ancestral power, and that by decoding them, they could awaken a slumbering Germanic spirit. Take the rune alges, shaped like a person reaching skyward. To the Vikings, it symbolized protection, a sign carved on shields to invoke the god's favor. The Thule Society reinterpreted it as a racial emblem, a call to purity. Then there's the swastika, an ancient solar symbol found from India to Native American petroglyphs. The Thule stripped it of its universal roots, grafting it onto a narrative of exclusion. But here's the haunting question: did these symbols ever truly belong to them? Or were they fragments of a broader wisdom, distorted to fit a darker agenda? Their obsession with Hyperborea reveals a deeper pattern. Greek texts described it as a land of harmony, where disease and strife were unknown. The Thule recast it as a lost Aryan homeland, a place to be reclaimed through esoteric rituals and political upheaval. They hosted seances to channel Hyperborean spirits, scoured Icelandic sagas for clues, and even funded expeditions to the Arctic, convinced the ruins of their utopia lay beneath the ice. Modern geologists scoff, but fringe researchers note eerie parallels between Hyperborean legends and accounts of a prehistoric warm Arctic, a time when, scientifically, the region was habitable. Coincidence or evidence that myths sometimes wear the cloak of forgotten history? Yet the Thule's most lasting legacy isn't their failed quest, it's their symbology's corruption. Runes meant to honor Odin's sacrifices became badges of hate. The irony, Norse tradition itself warned against such misuse. The Havamal, a Viking ethical code, states, words of power should not be thrown carelessly. The Thule ignored this, and in doing so proved the old adage, symbols don't corrupt people, people corrupt symbols. So when we see these ancient marks today, let's remember, their power isn't in who claims them, but in what they once meant. The runes still whisper their original truths, if we're willing to listen beyond the noise of those who tried to silence them. The Eleusinian mysteries didn't just promise immortality, they delivered it one sip at a time. For nearly 2,000 years, from the twilight of the Bronze Age to the rise of Christianity, seekers flocked to the Temple of Demeter outside Athens, where priests administered a sacred brew called kykeon. The initiates swore an oath of silence so absolute that even today, we only have fragments of what truly transpired, but those fragments are tantalizing. Ancient texts speak of participants emerging, transformed, having seen the heart of existence. Was this mere religious fervor, or did the kykeon contain something far more potent, a psychoactive key to the afterlife? Consider the ritual structure. After days of fasting and purification, initiates entered the telesterion, a vast hall where the kykeon was served. Within hours, they reported visions of Persephone's descent into the underworld, her return symbolizing the cycle of death and rebirth. But here's the twist: modern ethnobotanists have identified ergot, a fungus growing on barley, as a likely ingredient. ergot contains lysergic acid, the precursor to LSD. Coincidence or evidence that the priests of Eleusis were master chemists, crafting a sacrament that dissolved the boundary between mortal and divine? The symbolism runs deeper. Demeter, the goddess at the center of the rites, wasn't just a harvest deity, she was the earth itself, grieving for her daughter Persephone during winter, rejoicing at her return in spring. The initiates didn't just hear this myth, they lived it. The darkness of the Telesterion mirrored the underworld, the Kaikion's effects simulating Persephone's journey. This wasn't theater, it was participatory alchemy where the human psyche became the crucible for transformation. Yet the greatest secret might lie in what didn't happen. Unlike other mystery cults, Eleusis never suffered persecution. Even Roman emperors like Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius underwent initiation. Why? Because the mysteries offered something rare in the ancient world: hope. Not just hope for an afterlife, but proof, a visceral, chemical assurance that death wasn't an end but a passage. The Kaikion didn't just induce visions, it erased fear. So when early Christian bishops finally shuttered Eleusis in the 4th century, they didn't just destroy a temple, they silenced a technology, one that had, for millennia, turned the fear of death into a dance of light and shadow. The real mystery isn't whether the Kaikion worked, but why we ever stopped seeking what it offered. The Hashishin didn't just kill, they rewrote the rules of reality itself. Hidden in the peaks of Persia's Alborz Mountains, this medieval sect turned terror into theater, staging assassinations so precise they felt supernatural. But their blade wasn't their deadliest tool, it was the story around the blade. Witnesses swore they saw killers materialize from shadows or walk through walls, only to vanish like smoke. The word assassin itself comes from their name, yet history remembers them as mere murderers. What if we've missed the point? Behind their bloody reputation lay a far more unsettling truth. The Hashishin were master illusionists, manipulating perception as ruthlessly as they wielded daggers. Take their most infamous tactic, the public, daylight murder of a powerful figure, often in a crowded mosque or marketplace. These weren't just hits, they were performances. The killer would strike, then stand calmly, waiting to be cut down by guards. Why? Because the message wasn't in the death, it was in the certainty that followed. Rivals now knew no fortress was high enough, no army large enough to stop the Hashishin. Their leader, the enigmatic old man of the mountain, allegedly demonstrated this by ordering his men to leap from cliffs to prove their loyalty. Surviving records claim they obeyed without hesitation. Were they brainwashed, drugged, or had they been taught to see death itself as an illusion? Here's where it gets fascinating. The Hashishin's fortress, Alamat, wasn't just a hideout, it was a stage. Chronicles describe gardens of unparalleled beauty hidden within its walls, where initiates were allegedly given a taste of paradise before missions. Some scholars argue these gardens were elaborate hoaxes, using mirrors, hydraulics, and hallucinogens to simulate heaven. Imagine a young recruit, drugged with hashish, though modern research disputes this etymology, waking in a perfumed oasis with flowing wine and singing maidens, only to be told, "This is your reward if you obey." The psychological impact would be seismic, but what if these legends mask a deeper practice? Sufi mystics of the same era spoke of fana, annihilation of the self, a state where fear dissolves. Could the Hashishin have weaponized mystical techniques, turning enlightenment into a tool of control? Their symbol, the dagger on a white scarf, carried layered meaning. Yes, it warned of violence, but white also symbolized purity in Sufi traditions, and the curved blade mirrored the crescent moon, a nod to celestial cycles. Even their name hints at duality. Hashishin might derive from Sion, meaning people of the foundation. Were they nihilistic killers or guardians of some lost Gnostic truth? The answer may lie in their targets. They rarely struck at random, focusing on corrupt viziers and invading generals' figures who disrupted balance. When the Mongol warlord Hulagu demanded their surrender, the Hashishin's last grandmaster reportedly handed him the keys to Alamat with a smile. Days later, Hulagu's scribes found his tent filled with daggers and a note. What is real? The Mongols raised Alamat, but the question lingered. So the next time you hear assassin, don't just picture a cloaked figure with a blade. See the stagehands behind the curtain, the architects of fear who understood something primal. The mind is the truest fortress, and sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't steel. It's the unshakable belief that the walls around you were never really there at all. The Cathars didn't just defy the church, they rewrote the gospel of love itself. In the sun-baked hills of medieval Languedoc, this persecuted sect whispered a radical truth. The world wasn't created by a benevolent god, but by a flawed demiurge, a lesser deity who trapped divine sparks of light in the prison of flesh. To the Catholic authorities, this was heresy. To the Cathars, it was liberation. Their sacred text, the Gospel of the Secret Supper, wasn't just an alternative scripture. It was a key, one that turned the crucifixion from a sacrifice into an illusion. According to their teachings, Christ never truly suffered on the cross because matter itself was an illusion. The real crucifixion, the soul's entrapment in the physical world. This wasn't just theology, it was resistance. While the church amassed wealth and land, the Cathars lived as perfecti, wandering ascetics who rejected materialism, ate no meat, and blessed the dying with the consolamentum, a ritual that promised the soul's final escape from reincarnation. Their symbol, the dove holding an olive branch, wasn't just a nod to peace. It represented the spirit's flight from the body's cage. But here's where it gets haunting. When Crusaders stormed their last stronghold at Montségur in 1244, hundreds of perfecti walked willingly into the flames rather than renounce their faith. Why? Because to them, fire wasn't an end, it was a doorway. The mystery deepens with their rumored treasure. As the siege tightened, chronicles claim 4 Cathars lowered themselves down the cliff at night, carrying something precious. Not gold or relics, but possibly their most sacred texts, or something far more intangible. Some scholars suggest it was the Gospel of Love, a lost text said to distill Christ's teachings into a single commandment. The divine resides within, not in temples or rituals. Others believe the real treasure was their oral tradition, whispered from teacher to disciple in a chain unbroken since the earliest Gnostics. What makes the Cathars unforgettable isn't just their defiance, but their duality. They saw the world as a battlefield between light and dark, yet preached non-violence. They called the flesh a prison, yet cared tenderly for the sick. Even their name Cathar, from the Greek katharos, meaning pure, hints at their paradox. Purity wasn't about denial, but recognition. To them, every act of kindness, every moment of clarity, was a spark of the divine breaking through the illusion. So when the last embers of Montségur cooled, the church may have thought it erased them. But the Cathars knew a secret: ideas don't burn. Their gospel of love, whispered in shadows, still echoes in the quiet places where people dare to ask, what if heaven wasn't a place to reach, but a truth to remember? The Priory of Sion didn't just guard a secret, they weaponized doubt itself. Emerging from the shadows of 20th century France, this enigmatic society claimed to protect the most explosive bloodline in history, the descendants of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. But here's the twist: their so-called evidence, the infamous dossier secrets, was later revealed to be an elaborate fabrication. So why does their legend still captivate us? Because the real treasure wasn't a royal lineage, it was the audacity to question what we think we know about faith, power, and who gets to write history. Take the dossier secrets, those mysterious parchments discovered in the Parisian Bibliothèque Nationale in the 1960s. Purportedly medieval, they listed Grand Masters of the Priory, including luminaries like Leonardo da Vinci and Isaac Newton. The problem: forensic analysis showed the ink was modern, and the handwriting matched a known 20th century hoaxer, Pierre Plantard. Yet buried in the deception was a brilliant psychological ploy. By weaving together real historical figures and genuine esoteric traditions, the Priory's myth blurred the line between fact and fiction so masterfully that even skeptics paused. Was this just a prank gone viral or a deliberate act of subversion? The answer might lie in their symbolism. The Priory's emblem, a stylized fleur-de-lis intertwined with the letters P and S, wasn't plucked from thin air. It echoed the heraldry of French nobility and the hidden geometry in Da Vinci's Last Supper, where Mary Magdalene appears prominently at Christ's right hand. Coincidence? Hardly. The Priory's narrative tapped into an older, Gnostic tradition that revered the divine feminine, a thread running from the cult of Isis to medieval Grail legends. Their hoax resurrected a suppressed idea that spirituality doesn't belong to institutions, but to the quiet rebellion of seekers. Then there's Rennes-le-Château, the sleepy French village at the heart of the conspiracy. Its priest, Berenger Saunière, allegedly found cryptic parchments in the 1880s that made him inexplicably wealthy. The Priory's lore claimed these documents proved the bloodline's existence. Modern researchers debunked Saunière's windfall as embezzlement, but the village church of Mary Magdalene still holds clues. Its bizarre decorations, a demon gripping holy water, a twisted Stations of the Cross, suggest someone was mocking orthodoxy. Whether Saunière was a fraud or a whisperer of secrets, his church became a pilgrimage site for those who suspect history is a palimpsest with truth scratched beneath the surface. The real genius of the Priory of Sion wasn't in proving their claims, it was in exposing how desperately we want to believe. Their myth persists because it mirrors an ancient human longing, the hope that somewhere, somehow, the marginalized voices of history still speak. That Mary Magdalene wasn't just a footnote, but an apostle erased by patriarchy. That Jesus might have been a man who loved, fathered children, and left a legacy not of dogma, but of flesh and blood. Priory's greatest trick wasn't fabrication, it was holding up a mirror to our hunger for hidden narratives, proving that sometimes the most powerful secrets are the ones we already sense but dare not name. So the next time you hear whispers of holy bloodlines, ask yourself, does it matter if the Priory was real? Their legacy lies in the questions they unleashed, the ones that make us wonder who gets to decide what's sacred, and why we're so willing to follow the map when the real adventure lies in doubting the cartographer. The Ordo Templi Orientis didn't just practice magic, they turned the human body into a living temple. Founded in the early 20th century, this secret society's most notorious transformation came under Aleister Crowley, who reshaped its rituals into a daring experiment, sex as alchemy. At its core was the idea that erotic energy could be harnessed, refined, and directed toward spiritual awakening. But this wasn't about indulgence, it was a meticulous science of ecstasy, where every act, every breath became a sacred equation. Their infamous motto, "Do what thou wilt," wasn't a free pass for hedonism as critics claimed. It was a challenge to uncover one's true will, the divine purpose buried beneath societal conditioning and fear. Crowley's system, called the Lemma, drew from Egyptian mythology, Kabbalah, and Tantric traditions, blending them into a radical new framework. Take the Star Ruby ritual, where practitioners traced pentagrams in the air while vibrating names of gods, not to suppress desire but to elevate it. The body's impulses weren't sins to conquer, they were gateways. Even their most controversial practices, like the Gnostic Mass, where participants consumed a consecrated cake of light, rumored to contain bodily fluids, followed an exacting symbolism. The act mirrored the Catholic Eucharist, but with a twist. Divinity wasn't outsourced to a distant god. It was recognized within the self, awakened through union. But here's where the OTO's legacy gets misunderstood. Their rituals weren't about shock value. They were about polarity, the dance between masculine and feminine energies, the electric charge between opposites. Crowley's diaries describe ceremonies where partners, through controlled intimacy, sought to generate the serpent power, a kundalini-like force that could unlock higher consciousness. Modern neurobiology offers an intriguing parallel. During deep meditative states or profound intimacy, the brain's parietal lobe quiets, dissolving the sense of separateness. Was the OTO centuries ahead of its time, hacking the nervous system to replicate mystical experiences? The debate over their motto reveals a deeper tension. To outsiders, "do what thou wilt" sounded like anarchy. To initiates, it was a koan. True will wasn't about whims, it was about alignment, like a tree growing toward sunlight without conscious choice. Crowley compared it to a rocket's trajectory. Once launched correctly, no further steering is needed. This idea echoes through modern psychology's concept of flow, where action and awareness merge effortlessly. The OTO's real innovation wasn't their methods. It was their insistence that liberation begins not by denying desire, but by transmuting it into a compass pointing toward the divine. So when scholars argue whether the OTO was a cult or a crucible for enlightenment, perhaps both labels miss the mark. They were pioneers, mapping a territory still misunderstood today, the uncharted frontier where flesh and spirit aren't at war but in conversation. Their rituals may have been unorthodox, but their question remains urgent. What if the path to the sacred isn't away from the body, but through it? After all, even the purest light, when split through a prism, reveals it was never just one color to begin with. The Vrill society didn't just dabble in the occult, they sought to weaponize the very fabric of the cosmos. In the smoke-filled salons of Weimar-era Berlin, this clandestine circle became obsessed with a concept as seductive as it was elusive. Vrill, an invisible energy they believed flowed through all living things, a force capable of bending reality itself. Drawing from Edward Bulwer Lytton's sci-fi novel The Coming Race, where an advanced subterranean race wielded Vrill to power their civilization, the society's members, many of them influential aristocrats and proto-fascists, convinced themselves this wasn't fiction, but forgotten history. Their mission to reclaim this primal power and awaken the latent abilities of the Aryan race. But here's where the story twists. The Vrill society's mythology wasn't purely invented. It wove together threads of genuine esoteric traditions, from Hindu prana to the Kai of Chinese medicine. Even modern physics acknowledges that the universe is crackling with unseen energies, dark matter, quantum fields, forces we've barely begun to understand. The society's fatal flaw wasn't their search for Vrill, but their insistence that it belonged exclusively to a mythical Aryan master race. This distortion turned a potentially profound exploration into a dangerous pseudoscience, one that later fed Nazi obsessions with racial purity and otherworldly technology. Their most enduring legend involves the Vrilja, an ancient Nordic civilization said to have harnessed this energy to build flying machines, prototypes of the UFOs later mythologized by the Nazis. Some members even claimed psychic communication with these ancestors, channeling blueprints for bizarre devices like the Die Glock, the bell, a purported time-warping engine. Skeptics dismiss these tales as pure fantasy, but consider this. In the 1940s, Allied troops recovered German research into anti-gravity and crystal-powered energy systems projects far ahead of their time. Coincidence or evidence that beneath the society's racial delusions, they stumbled onto fragments of something real? The Vrill society's symbol, a black sun with 12 jagged rays, became a haunting emblem of their ambition. Originally a pagan solar motif, it was reinterpreted as a vortex of Vrill energy, its rays representing the 12 layers of initiation required to master the Force. Today, that symbol is banned in Germany, a relic of twisted mysticism. Yet the question lingers, did they tap into something genuine, only to corrupt it with ideology? After all, the same energy fields they sought to exploit are now studied by quantum physicists under different names: zero-point energy, torsion fields, ideas once ridiculed that now edge toward mainstream science. So when we dismiss the Vrill society as mere occultists or Nazi collaborators, we might miss the deeper cautionary tale. It's not that hidden energies don't exist, it's that the pursuit of them, divorced from ethics and inclusivity, becomes a mirror for our darkest biases. The real Vrill may not be a cosmic force, but the spark of curiosity itself, one that can illuminate or consume depending on who wields it. The Shriners didn't just wear fezzes, they turned secrecy into spectacle. At first glance, this Masonic offshoot seems like a fraternity of pranksters, famous for their miniature cars in parades and boisterous charity events. But beneath the tasseled hats and punchlines lies a puzzle. Why would a group rooted in Freemasonry's solemn rituals embrace such irreverence? The answer might lie in an unexpected influence: the whirling dervishes of Sufi Islam. Their full name, the ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, isn't just exotic branding. It's a clue to their hidden lineage, one that traces back to the playful wisdom of Sufi mystics who believed enlightenment could be found in laughter as easily as in prayer. Consider their initiation rites. While most secret societies favor dimly lit chambers and grave oaths, Shriner ceremonies include absurd tests like pretending to row a boat across a painted ocean or being attacked by members wielding inflated goatskin bags. Outsiders dismiss these as pure farce, but Sufi traditions hold a mirror to their logic. The dervishes of old used humor to disrupt ego, their jokes acting as spiritual crowbars to pry open rigid minds. The Shriners' antics might serve a similar purpose, using chaos to break down the initiate's defenses, preparing them to receive deeper teachings masked as nonsense. Even their signature fez carries layered meaning. Its crimson hue echoes the Sufis' red rose, symbolizing the heart's awakening, while the tassel represents the seeker's connection to divine guidance, swaying like a pendulum between wisdom and folly. Then there's their most public face, philanthropy. Shriners' Hospitals for Children, their flagship charity, has treated millions regardless of race or religion. This isn't just goodwill, it's enacted mysticism. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." By healing children's bodies, the Shriners enact a sacred alchemy, turning compassion into a bridge between worlds. Their hospitals, often adorned with Moorish arches and star and crescent motifs, silently nod to the Islamic roots they honor without proclaiming. But perhaps the shrewdest trick lies in their duality. While Freemasonry guards its rites with solemnity, the Shriners dance in the open, their secrecy hidden in plain sight. A clown riding a tiny bicycle might seem trivial until you recall that medieval court jesters were often the only ones permitted to speak truth to power. In a world obsessed with appearing profound, the Shriners whisper an ancient secret. Sometimes the deepest truths wear the disguise of foolishness. So the next time you see their parade, don't just chuckle at the spectacle. Look closer, that fez isn't just a hat. It's a wink from the universe, reminding us that enlightenment doesn't always come with a solemn face. Sometimes it arrives laughing. The Bilderberg group doesn't need ancient symbols or cryptic rituals. Their power lies in what they don't show you. Since 1954, this invitation-only gathering of billionaires, politicians, and thought leaders has met behind closed doors, their discussions off the record, their attendees sworn to secrecy. No minutes are published, no resolutions passed. It's this very absence of traditional secrecy, no hooded robes, no initiation rites, that makes them the perfect canvas for modern myth-making. Because when you strip away the pageantry, what remains is far more unsettling. A room where the world's most influential people simply talk, but here's where the mystery deepens. Unlike the Freemasons with their compasses or the Rosicrucians with their roses, the Bilderberg group leaves no trail of symbols to decode. Their logo, a bland blue and white insignia resembling a corporate name tag. Their meeting locations, luxury hotels with names like the Grove or the Dolce, places so ordinary they blur into the background. This isn't just discretion, it's a masterclass in misdirection. By refusing the aesthetics of secrecy, they force us to project our own fears onto them. Are they a cabal orchestrating global markets and wars, as conspiracy theorists claim, or just a high-powered networking event like Davos with better champagne? The truth might be stranger than either extreme. Consider their guest list. A single meeting might seat a Silicon Valley CEO beside a NATO general, a European central banker, and a media mogul, all exchanging ideas without the pressure of public statements. Proponents argue this fosters candid dialogue on crises like climate change or cyber warfare. Critics counter that unaccountable conversations between elites inevitably skew policy in their favor. The irony, both sides might be right. The Bilderberg group's real influence isn't in some shadowy plot, but in the subtle alchemy of relationships. A handshake here, a whispered suggestion there. These are the currencies that move empires. Yet the absence of traditional secrecy rituals doesn't mean they lack symbolism. Their exclusivity is their emblem. The unmarked agendas, the private jets converging on a single hotel, these are modern-day hieroglyphs, signaling power just as effectively as any pyramid or all-seeing eye. And like all potent symbols, they're mirrors. The conspiracy theorist sees a puppet master's strings. The pragmatist sees a boardroom without minutes. But perhaps the most provocative question isn't what they're hiding. It's why we're so desperate to believe they're hiding anything at all. In an age of leaks and transparency, the Bilderberg group endures as an anomaly, a relic of discretion in a world that demands visibility. Their greatest trick isn't concealment, it's revealing how uncomfortable we are with the idea that some conversations will always happen beyond our sight. Because the scariest secret of all might be that the people shaping our world don't need rituals or symbols, they just need a closed door. The Skull and Bones didn't just recruit Yale's elite, they buried them alive. Metaphorically, of course, nestled in a windowless crypt known as the Tomb, this secret society has groomed presidents, CEOs, and CIA directors since 1832, all under the gaze of a grinning skull and crossbones. But their real power isn't in the relics they hoard, like the alleged skull of Apache leader Geronimo, or even in their infamous initiation rites. It's in the unspoken alchemy of turning college sophomores into a network that spans the highest echelons of power. Take their numbering system. Every member is assigned a bones name, a cryptonym like Magog or Thor, erasing their past identity to forge a new one. This isn't just whimsy, it's psychological rebranding. When former President George W. Bush referred to his bones name in interviews decades after graduation. It wasn't nostalgia, it was proof of the society's lasting imprint. The rituals, though shrouded in rumor, reportedly involve confessing one's deepest secrets while lying in a coffin, symbolizing rebirth into the Bones Brotherhood. Critics dismiss it as theatrical hazing, but consider this: when you've shared your darkest truths with peers who will later command armies and markets, loyalty isn't just emotional, it's geopolitical. Then there's the tomb itself. Its Egyptian revival architecture, complete with sphinxes and hieroglyphic motifs, isn't just decorative. It's a silent syllabus, teaching initiates that power, like ancient pharaohs, operates in cycles. Inside, the walls are lined with portraits of past members, bonesmen who shaped the Manhattan Project, the Cold War, and modern finance. The message is clear: you aren't just joining a club, you're inheriting a legacy. Yet the most intriguing artifact might be the society's clock, permanently set to 5 minutes to midnight. Some say it's a memento mori, a reminder of mortality. Others argue it's a nod to the doomsday clock, symbolizing the perpetual brinkmanship of global power. Either way, it's a fitting emblem for a group whose alumni have steered nations through wars, espionage, and economic crises, always operating just ahead of the public's gaze. So when conspiracy theorists whisper about skull and bones pulling the world's strings, they're missing the point. The society's real magic isn't in clandestine meetings or occult symbols. It's in the unshakable belief, passed from one generation to the next, that history isn't something you watch. It's something you make, and sometimes the most powerful rituals aren't about summoning dark forces, but convincing the initiated that they're the ones who belong in the room where it happens. Opus Dei didn't just practice piety, they turned discipline into a silent art form. Unlike the cloak and dagger secrecy of other societies, this Catholic organization operated in daylight, its members blending into offices and universities, their devotion hidden beneath tailored suits and polished smiles. But beneath that unassuming surface lay a startling paradox: a modern institution with medieval tools. Their most infamous symbol, the cilice, a spiked chain worn around the thigh, wasn't some archaic relic but a voluntary embrace of discomfort, a daily reminder that spirituality wasn't meant to be comfortable. To outsiders, it seemed like masochism. To members, it was a lifeline, a way to anchor the soul in a world of distractions. Yet Opus Dei's real power wasn't in its austerity, it was in its adaptability. Founded in 1928 by Maria Escrivá, the group rejected monastic isolation, insisting that holiness could be pursued in the middle of the world. A lawyer drafting contracts, a teacher grading papers, a janitor mopping floors, all could become acts of worship if offered up with the right intention. This wasn't just theology, it was a radical rebranding of sanctity, turning the mundane into the sacred. Their emblem, a cross cradled within a circle, whispered this very idea: divinity didn't live apart from daily life but at its very center. Then came the Da Vinci Code, painting Opus Dei as a shadowy legion of fanatics, their corridors echoing with the slap of self-flagellation. The truth was far more nuanced. While their practices were severe sleep deprivation, corporal mortification, they were never compulsory, only encouraged as tools for self-mastery. Critics argued these methods bordered on psychological control, but members described them as liberation, a way to quiet the ego's relentless noise. Modern neuroscience offers an odd parallel. Controlled discomfort, like cold exposure or fasting, can heighten mental clarity and resilience. Was Opus Dei's asceticism, then, not about punishment but about rewiring the mind to perceive deeper truths? The society's silence fueled speculation. Unlike Freemasons or Rosicrucians, They had no cryptic handshakes or layered initiations, just a vow of discretion about internal affairs. This wasn't secrecy for conspiracy, but for focus. Imagine a musician tuning out chatter to hear a faint melody. Opus Dei's quiet was their tuning fork, aligning members to a frequency the world had forgotten. Even their name, Latin for work of God, hinted at their ethos. Spirituality wasn't a weekend hobby, but a craft to be honed daily, like carpentry or poetry. So when skeptics ask whether Opus Dei is a path to enlightenment or a system of control, the answer might be both. Their methods are extreme, but their goal is universal, to remind us that transformation isn't found in grand gestures, but in the small, sharp moments where we choose between comfort and something greater. The Silas's spikes, the pre-dawn prayers, the relentless focus, they're not about suffering for its own sake, but about staying awake in a world that's always trying to lull us back to sleep. The Bohemian Grove doesn't just host summer retreats, it stages a spectacle under the unblinking eyes of a 40-foot owl. Every July, some of the world's most powerful men, CEOs, politicians, even former presidents gather in this secluded California redwood forest for 2 weeks of music, camaraderie, and a ritual that sparked whispers for over a century, the cremation of care. At dusk, robed figures carry an effigy named Dol Care to the base of the stone owl, set it aflame, and declare their liberation from life's burdens. To outsiders, it's either an eccentric tradition or something far darker. But what if the truth lies not in the flames, but in the symbolism hidden in plain sight? Take the owl itself. In ancient Athens, the owl was Athena's companion, representing wisdom. Yet in other traditions, owls are omens of death or messengers between worlds. The Bohemian Club's owl, carved from stone with hollow eyes that glow in the firelight, evokes both interpretations. Some researchers point to its resemblance to Moloch, the Canaanite deity associated with child sacrifice, a connection that fuels conspiracy theories. Club historians insist it's merely a mascot, chosen in the 1870s for its association with knowledge. But when you combine the owl's gaze with the ritual's theatricality, it's easy to see why skeptics raise eyebrows. Then there's the cremation of Care's script, a melodramatic ode penned by member Joseph D. Redding in the late 19th century. Lines like "Midsummer sets us free" and "Burn him anew, ye flames" sound like something from a Gothic opera. Yet buried in the theatrics is a psychological key. The ritual isn't about literal sacrifice, but symbolic release. In a sense, it's the ultimate executive retreat, a sanctioned space where titans of industry and government can shed their public personas, if only for a night. The fire becomes a metaphor, purging the weight of responsibility. But the grove's real mystique lies in what happens beyond the ritual. Lakeside chats between senators and tech moguls, impromptu performances by world-class musicians, and lowland talks where guests discuss everything from climate change to covert operations, all shielded by a vow of secrecy. This isn't just networking, it's a modern-day mystery school where the curriculum is influence itself. The club's motto, "Weaving spiders come not here," ostensibly discourages business talk, but critics argue that power doesn't need agendas to coalesce. Sometimes all it takes is a shared experience under the same looming owl. So is the Bohemian Grove a harmless gathering of elites or a shadowy cabal? The answer might be both and neither. Its rituals borrow from theater, its symbolism from antiquity, and its guest list from the highest echelons of society. But the most compelling secret isn't in the flames or the owl's stony stare. It's in the unspoken understanding that when the world's decision-makers play at being pagans for a night, the line between performance and belief can blur in ways no conspiracy theory could ever capture. The legend begins in 12th century England, where villagers near the town of Woolpit stumbled upon two children with skin the color of emerald leaves, speaking an unknown language and wearing strange garments. According to the chronicles, they claimed to come from a place called St. Martin's Land, a twilight realm where the sun never rose and the light was perpetual dusk. Were these children lost travelers, victims of a bizarre medical condition, or something far stranger? The mystery deepens when you consider their diet. They refused all food until they discovered green beans, which they devoured eagerly. To modern ears, this detail might sound like fantasy, but what if it's a veiled reference to something more profound? One theory suggests the green children's tale encodes ancient earth wisdom. In pre-Christian Europe, green was the color of fertility, linked to deities like the Green Man, a symbol of nature's cyclical rebirth. The children's aversion to ordinary food and their affinity for beans, a plant associated with the underworld in some traditions, could hint at a forgotten connection to chthonic rituals. Perhaps their subterranean homeland wasn't a literal cavern but a metaphor for the hidden, nourishing power of the earth itself, a knowledge suppressed by the church and preserved in allegory. Then there's the extraterrestrial angle, the children's green hue, unfamiliar language, and description of a sunless world eerily parallel modern accounts of alien encounters. Their home, bathed in eternal twilight, mirrors descriptions of planets orbiting distant red dwarfs, where daylight is dim and perpetual. Even their eventual adaptation to human food and the boy's tragic death echo the trope of extraterrestrials struggling to survive in our environment. Medieval chroniclers, lacking the vocabulary for interstellar travel, might have interpreted an otherworldly visitation through the lens of folklore, transforming astronauts into fairy tale figures. But the most haunting possibility is that the story is neither myth nor alien contact, but a distorted memory of a real historical trauma. Some scholars propose the children were Flemish orphans, displaced by ethnic violence during the reign of King Stephen. Their greenish pallor, a symptom of malnutrition or arsenic poisoning from contaminated well water. Their subterranean origin, a misinterpretation of their heavily accented description of lowland marshes. Even their strange clothing could have been foreign wool dyed with verdigris. Yet this theory, while plausible, doesn't explain why the surviving girl, after learning English, insisted her homeland lay beyond a great river of unearthly luminosity. Perhaps the truth lies in the story's endurance. Unlike other medieval oddities, the Green Children legend persisted for centuries, retold with reverence. That longevity suggests it tapped into something primal, a recognition that the earth keeps secrets, whether buried in its soil or written in the stars. The next time you see a patch of wild beans growing in a shadowed ditch, remember, some mysteries don't demand solutions. They exist to remind us that the world is stranger and richer than we'll ever fully know. The Aghori don't just break taboos, they dissolve them, turning what society shuns into a bridge to the divine. Picture a riverbank at dawn, where a figure smeared in ash sits cross-legged beside a half-burned corpse, meditating not in spite of the decay but because of it. To outsiders, this scene is grotesque. To the Aghori, it's the purest form of truth. These Hindu ascetics, often called the most radical of all sadhus, don't merely reject societal norms, they invert them, seeking enlightenment in places most would flee from. Their path isn't about shock value, it's a relentless pursuit of non-duality, the realization that life and death, purity and filth, sacred and profane, are illusions of the untrained mind. Their rituals read like a catalogue of horrors to the uninitiated, drinking from skull cups, eating rotting food scavenged from cremation grounds, smearing their bodies with funeral pyre ashes. Yet each act is a meticulously crafted mirror, reflecting back the deepest fears and attachments that bind ordinary consciousness. When an Aghori meditates on a corpse, they aren't glorifying death, they're confronting the ultimate equalizer, the fate that unites kings and beggars. The skull they cradle isn't a prop, it's a reminder that the ego, like the body, is temporary. Even their signature ash, vibhuti, carries dual meaning. To Hindus, it's sacred, a symbol of Shiva's power to destroy illusion. To the Aghori, it's also literal, the residue of everything reduced to sameness by fire. But here's what most miss: the Aghori's path isn't nihilism, it's alchemy. By immersing themselves in what society deems unclean, they perform a radical experiment. Can the mind remain undisturbed when stripped of all conditioning? Modern psychology offers an unexpected parallel: exposure therapy, where facing fears in controlled settings diminishes their power. The Aghori take this to its logical extreme, not to desensitize but to transcend. Their goal isn't indifference, it's liberation from the very concept of aversion. The irony: their shocking exterior often hides profound compassion. Aghori are known to heal lepers, guide lost souls, and offer blessings to those brave enough to approach. Their gurus teach that true detachment isn't coldness, it's the ability to engage fully with the world without being enslaved by it. In this light, their practices aren't morbid but medicinal, a bitter tonic for minds poisoned by artificial hierarchies. So the next time you recoil at an Aghori's image, ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? The skull in their hand, or the realization that one day you'll hold one too? Their path whispers a secret most spiritual traditions veil. In metaphor, enlightenment isn't found by avoiding the dark, but by staring into it until the dark stops staring back. The Anonymous Collective didn't just adopt the Guy Fawkes mask, they weaponized its irony. In an era where every click leaves a digital fingerprint, this faceless legion turned anonymity into their most potent symbol, borrowing a prop from a comic book movie to stage a real-world revolution. The mask, originally from V for Vendetta, wasn't chosen at random. Its grin is a paradox, both a smirk at authority and a blank slate anyone can inhabit. But here's the twist: while ancient societies guarded secrets with blood oaths and coded symbols, Anonymous operates in the glare of social media, proving that in the digital age, the most powerful secrets aren't hidden, they're broadcast by voices no one can trace. Consider their tactics. Whether Freemasons etched symbols into stone, Anonymous floods servers with digital noise, DDoS attacks that crash corrupt systems, leaked documents dumped onto the open web like modern-day dossier secrets. Their signature move isn't whispering in shadows but amplifying chaos until the truth can't be ignored. Yet their mask does more than conceal identities, it erases hierarchy. A teenager in a basement and a seasoned programmer share the same visage, their actions judged not by pedigree but by impact. This isn't just anonymity, it's alchemy, turning the chaos of the internet into a lever that tilts power structures. The brilliance of their symbol lies in its adaptability. The Guy Fawkes mask isn't tied to a single ideology. It's been worn by anti-censorship protesters in Hong Kong, Occupy Wall Street activists, and even pranksters trolling online forums. Unlike the Rosicrucians' Rose or the Masons' Square, it doesn't encode a fixed doctrine. Instead, it asks a question: who controls the narrative? In a world where governments and corporations track every purchase and keystroke, the mask becomes a firewall for the soul, a way to say, you don't own my face or my voice. But the real mystery isn't how Anonymous stays hidden, it's why their symbol resonates so deeply. Psychologists point to the mask's uncanny valley effect: human enough to feel familiar, artificial enough to unsettle. It taps into an ancient archetype, the trickster who upends order from Loki to the cyberpunk ethos. And unlike the skulls and owls of older societies, this emblem was born in fiction, blurring the line between myth and reality. When thousands don the same mask at a protest, they're not just hiding, they're becoming something larger, a collective phantom that can't be jailed or silenced. The irony, Anonymous thrives precisely because secrecy is dying. In a world of facial recognition and data mining, their power comes from embracing transparency, flooding the system with so much light that shadows become impossible. Their mask isn't a barrier, it's a mirror reflecting back the uncomfortable truth that in the digital age, the most dangerous thing isn't a hidden agenda. It's a crowd of faces all asking the same question: what if we choose not to be afraid? And sometimes the most revolutionary act isn't stealing secrets, it's proving they were never yours to keep. From stonemasons etching compasses into cathedral walls to digital rebels hiding behind pixelated masks, these secret societies reveal something startling: humanity has always encrypted its deepest truths in symbols. The rituals may change, but the impulse remains the same. To preserve what's fragile in forms that endure. Think about it. A medieval alchemist's rose blooming on parchment and a hacker's glitching logo on a corrupted screen are doing the same work, carrying knowledge across time in a language only the initiated understand. What makes these symbols so resilient? They're more than codes, they're psychological triggers. The Freemasons' square and compass don't just represent virtues, they activate a mindset in those who recognize them. The Anonymous mask isn't just anonymity, it's a visual manifesto, and when an Aghori sad who smears ashes from a funeral pyre across their brow, they're not just rejecting societal norms, they're rewriting the very definition of sacred. Symbols at their core are spells cast across generations, but here's the twist: the greatest secret these societies guarded wasn't some arcane truth. It was the realization that power lies not in the knowledge itself, but in the act of seeking it. The Rosicrucians' rose, the Kabbalists' tree of life, the Bohemian Grove's owl, they're all invitations. To question, to look deeper, to recognize that every symbol is a door and every myth is a map waiting to be read. So as we step back from these hidden halls, ask yourself, what symbols resonate with you? Is it the quiet geometry of a mandala, the defiant grin of a pixelated mask, or something older, a rune, a sigil, a story whispered in your bones? The beauty of symbolism is that it's alive. It evolves, and the next chapter isn't written yet, it's waiting for you to decipher it. The past may be full of secrets, but the future, that's a code we'll crack together. Don't forget to share which symbols speak to you in the comments, and if you're hungry for more mysteries, explore our deep dives into lost civilizations and forgotten legends. The next enigma is just a click away. Hit subscribe, and let's keep unraveling history's greatest puzzles, one symbol at a time.